It was supposed to be a routine morning. Miami International Airport buzzed with the usual chaos. Tourists dragging wheeled luggage, families reuniting, customs lines snaking around corners. Officer Mike Thompson stood at his post in terminal, watching his K9 partner Max glide through the crowd with practiced ease. Max, a 3-year-old German shepherd, was no ordinary working dog. He had instincts that went beyond training, something nearly psychic about the way he sniffed out danger. Together, they'd cleared drugs, flagged illegal plants, and once uncovered a suitcase stuffed with undeclared exotic seafood. Nothing, however, had prepared Mike for what Max would uncover next. It began with a shift in posture, a subtle change. One moment, Max was trotting confidently past baggage carousel 4, and the next, he froze. His fur bristled, his body stiffened. Then came the sound, not a bark, not a growl, but a low, aching whine as if he were pleading. Mike's eyes narrowed. "What is it, boy?" Max ignored the command. Instead, he lunged forward, pawing at a large black suitcase circling slowly on the conveyor. No tags, no markings. Just a barcode and a hard plastic shell that looked like 1,000 others. Max's whine turned frantic. He circled the case, whimpering, pawing again. Something wasn't right. Mike called it in, per protocol. The area was secured. Backup arrived. But after the suitcase was x-rayed and showed no explosives, it was brushed aside, logged as low priority, and sent to the airport's holding area. No one claimed it, not that day, not the next. 3 days later, it still sat there, untouched. And Max? He couldn't stop thinking about it. Every time they passed the holding area, he pulled on the leash, ears alert, tail low. His body said what Mike already knew. Whatever was in that case was alive, and maybe dying. Mike tried to sound the alarm, but supervisors pushed back. No immediate threat, they said. Protocol, they said. Wait 72 hours. But Mike Thompson had spent the last 5 years learning how dangerous silence can be. He knew because of what happened to his daughter, Emily. At 15, she vanished without a trace on her way home from school. The system called it a runaway, then maybe human trafficking. But the file grew cold. Leads dried up. The world moved. Mike didn't. When he joined the airport K9 unit, it was Max who pulled him out of the dark. This dog, this partner, had never lied to him. And now Max was begging him to listen. So Mike did what any father, any cop, any human being with a soul would do. He pushed the red tape aside and opened the case. What he found inside, it would haunt him forever. Officer Mike Thompson couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He sat at his desk, the rhythmic hum of Miami International Airport filtering through the walls like static noise. 3 days had passed since Max first detected the black suitcase, and it was still sitting in the security holding area, unclaimed, unexamined, and very much ignored by everyone but him and his canine partner. Max had never reacted like that before. In their 18 months together, Mike had seen the German shepherd detect everything from narcotics to weapons, always calm and precise. But this time had been different. Max had whined, pawed, cried even. It wasn't alert behavior, it was desperation. Mike had reported it, of course, filed the paperwork, followed the chain of command. But all he got in return were protocol lectures and automated responses. The X-ray didn't show anything dangerous. The bomb-sniffing scans came back negative. No trace of drugs, no hint of explosives. So the suitcase was deemed low threat and placed in holding. But Max knew better, and so did Mike. The suitcase in question had originated in Bangkok, made stops in Dubai and Mexico City, and finally landed in Miami. That was odd in itself, an unnecessarily long, expensive routing that seemed designed to avoid scrutiny. The manifest listed the contents as textiles and handicrafts, but there was something too clean, too vague about the description. Max, meanwhile, remained fixated. Each day, as they walked past the holding area, the dog pulled toward the door, whimpering, pacing. He was clearly agitated. Mike had never seen him behave this way over anything that wasn't alive. On the third morning, Mike arrived an hour early. He stood outside the holding area with Max staring at the metal door as if it might open on its own. Max sat beside him, ears forward, muscles tense. "I know, buddy," Mike said softly. "I haven't forgotten." He knew he had to act, fast. During his lunch break, he found Dr. Emily Parker in the staff cafeteria. She was finishing a salad and scrolling through wildlife inspection reports. She looked up as he approached. "Emily, I need your opinion on something," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. She raised an eyebrow. "This sounds serious." "It is," Mike replied, lowering his voice. "Max is acting different. Not his usual alert. There's a suitcase he's been fixated on for 3 days now. It's not explosives, not drugs, but he's obsessed. Like he thinks there's something alive in there." Dr. Parker froze mid-bite. "Alive?" "Yeah." "What makes you think that?" "It's his behavior," Mike said. "I've seen how he reacts to live subjects in training. His body language changes. And this time, it's almost like he's trying to help whatever's inside." Parker set down her fork. "Show me." They walked together to the secure storage area. Mike swiped his ID to enter, and Max bounded ahead, tail low, posture tense. The suitcase sat on a stainless steel table, plain, black, nondescript. As they neared it, Max started circling, whining, his nose pressed against the seams. "That's the one," Mike said. Dr. Parker approached the case slowly. She didn't touch it, just observed. Then she leaned in, squinting at the edges. Her finger traced a line along the seam and stopped. "Mike," she whispered, "look at this. Tiny pinholes, barely visible unless you were searching, lined the edges of the suitcase. These aren't manufacturer defects," she said. "These are air holes, deliberate ones." Mike felt a chill crawl up his spine. "I've seen this before," she continued. "Wildlife traffickers drill holes like these for ventilation, for birds, reptiles, small mammals. If there's something in there, then every second counts," Mike finished, voice tense. He pulled out his phone and dialed his supervisor. "Sir, this is Thompson. I need authorization to open the black suitcase from Flight 982. Dr. Parker believes it may contain live animals." There was a pause, then a sigh on the other end. "Based on what?" "We followed protocol. It's being processed." "There are air holes, sir, and my K9 has been alerting for 3 days. Something is alive in there. I understand your concern, but we can't just break into unclaimed luggage on a hunch. Submit your request in writing. I'll escalate." Click. Mike cursed under his breath. "Expedite means tomorrow at best," he said to Parker. She folded her arms. "They might not have until tomorrow." Just then, the door opened. Sarah Collins stepped in, clipboard in hand. "Officer Thompson," she said evenly. "Doing inventory?" Mike and Parker exchanged glances. "We believe this suitcase may contain live animals," Mike said. "We need to inspect it now." Sarah glanced at the case, then she lowered her voice. "We've had 3 similar shipments come through in the last month," she said. "Same origin points, same vague manifests, same smell." Mike stared at her. "What happened to them?" "Claimed by couriers before anyone could inspect them." Sarah hesitated. "I can help if I swipe it in as inventory inspection. It'll log as routine. No red flags." "Why help us?" Mike asked. Sarah's eyes darkened. "Let's just say I've seen what happens when people look the other way." 20 minutes later, it was done. Sarah had logged the suitcase. Dr. Parker gathered medical supplies. Max waited at the door. Mike placed his gloved hands on the latches. "Ready?" he asked. "Let's do it." Parker nodded, pulling on her own gloves. He flipped the lock and slowly lifted the lid. The smell hit them like a punch. Urine. "She's something sharp and wild." Max whimpered. "Oh my God," Parker whispered. Inside were 3 tiger cubs, tiny, barely breathing. One smaller than the rest, ribs visible, chest fluttering with shallow breaths. "They're alive," Mike said, his voice cracking. "They're actually alive." He looked down at the fragile lives in front of him. at the broken, trembling body of the smallest cub, and in that moment, all the pain of the past 5 years crashed over him. His daughter, Emily, the backpack they'd found near the port, the case that went cold. These cubs weren't just animals. They were symbols of innocence, of lives stolen by greed. Dr. Parker was already moving. We need to get them out. Now. She carefully lifted the strongest cub. This one might pull through. Mike reached for the second, feeling the heat radiating off its tiny frame. The third lay limp, barely conscious. This one's critical, Parker said urgently. We need to get them to the wildlife unit immediately. Mike looked to Sarah. Can you create a distraction? She nodded. Give me 2 minutes. Use the corridor past international arrivals. I'll keep it clear. Mike wrapped the weakest cub in a towel. The tiny tiger let out a pitiful mew, barely audible. We fight. With them, Mike whispered. The medical unit was quiet, except for the soft hum of machines and the rustling of towels as Dr. Emily Parker worked quickly, her hands steady and precise. Mike stood nearby, holding one of the tiger cubs, its eyes still closed, its breathing shallow but determined. The scent of antiseptic mingled with the earthy musk of the cubs, but Mike barely noticed. His focus was locked on the tiny heartbeat beneath his palm. This one is stable. For now, Dr. Parker said, inserting a small IV line with practiced grace. But that little guy, she glanced toward the smallest cub lying on the warming pad. He's in real danger. The door opened behind them. Sarah Collins stepped in, no longer the composed logistics officer. Her expression was tense, alert. I bought us 15 minutes, she said. Spilled a cart near Terminal D. Security's tied up dealing with it. Mike gave her a grateful nod. Parker glanced up. We'll need more than 15 if we want them to survive. As Sarah moved to the door to keep watch, Mike leaned down toward the smallest cub. It was barely moving, its tiny paw twitching once before going limp again. He whispered, Come on, little one. You made it this far. But their time was running out. The door swung open with a gust of cool air. Supervisor James Peterson stormed in, followed by a taller man in federal uniform. Agent Robert Miller, Wildlife Protection Service. Mike's gut twisted. You opened the suitcase without authorization? Peterson snapped. It was registered as inventory inspection. Sarah cut in. Everything logged, nothing illegal. Miller stepped forward, ignoring the tension. What exactly did you find? 3 Bengal tiger cubs, Dr. Parker answered calmly. Smuggled in a suitcase. Critically dehydrated. Malnourished. One is in serious distress. Miller peered into the warming box, his expression unreadable. Jesus, he muttered. These are endangered. Where are they from? Flight manifest says textiles and handicrafts. From Mexico City, Mike answered. But the routing started in Bangkok. Miller turned sharply. You're telling me these cubs were transported across multiple countries? Bangkok, Dubai, Mexico City. Inside a suitcase? That's what the evidence suggests, Sarah confirmed. Peterson folded his arms. This is a federal matter. Now, Miller nodded. We'll secure the scene and prepare transport to the nearest wildlife rehabilitation center. No, Dr. Parker said, surprising them all. They're not stable enough to be moved. Miller arched an eyebrow. Doctor, we appreciate your... They won't survive the trip, she said firmly. Especially the smallest one, he's barely holding on. Mike stepped in. She's right. We move them now. We lose him. Miller studied them, then gave a tight nod. Fine, you've got 12 hours. Just then the door creaked open again. A woman stepped inside, sleek, elegant, perfectly put together in a tailored gray suit. Her silver-streaked hair was swept back in a chignon, her sharp eyes immediately scanning the room. Dr. Jessica Reynolds, Agent Miller greeted. Thank you for coming. Mike stiffened. This was her. I came as soon as I heard, she said, her voice smooth, cultured. Tiger cubs. How tragic. I run the largest conservation foundation for big cats in North America. I want to help. Dr. Parker moved instinctively between Reynolds and the cubs. They're being treated. They're not ready to be moved. Of course, Reynolds said with a soft smile. I wouldn't dream of interfering. I'm simply offering my facility. We're federally approved and equipped for cases exactly like this. Mike didn't buy it for a second. Reynolds stepped closer, her eyes falling on the smallest cub. Poor thing, she murmured. Some don't survive the journey. It's unfortunate, but it happens. Parker bristled. That doesn't make it acceptable. Reynolds turned her gaze toward Mike. And you must be Officer Thompson. I hear we have you to thank. Just doing my job, he replied coldly. Commendable, she said with a tight smile. Dedication like that is rare. After she left, Dr. Parker exhaled. She didn't even blink when she saw them, like she already knew. She did, Sarah said quietly. She's been moving shipments like this for years. These aren't rescues. They're merchandise. Mike turned toward her. You've got proof? Shipping records, witness statements, all lead to her foundation, but nothing direct. She uses couriers, intermediaries, always clean. Miller stepped closer. We need something concrete to take her down. We've tried before. Well, Mike said, looking down at the smallest cub. Maybe now we have it. Just then the cub shuddered violently. Crash! Parker yelled, rushing to its side. Mike stepped back as she worked. Oxygen, fluids, medication. The cub's chest convulsed. Parker pressed a hand over its heart, her other on a tiny IV drip. Stay with me, she whispered. Don't give up. Mike watched in silence, heart pounding. This little creature had endured unimaginable cruelty, and it was still fighting. Parker worked for what felt like hours. Finally, the monitor beeped, a steady rhythm. The cub's breathing evened out. He's not safe, she said, her voice tight. But he's still here. Mike reached out and gently stroked the cub's head, its tiny paw wrapped around his finger. We're with you, he whispered. Later that evening, Sarah returned to the room with a flash drive. We pulled manifests from the last 3 months, she said. There's a pattern. Same flight routes, same fake descriptions, all lead back to Reynolds. Mike leaned against the wall, exhausted but burning with purpose. We need to stop her, he said. She'll be back, Sarah warned. And she'll try to claim them. She won't get the chance, Parker said fiercely. Not while they're under my care. Suddenly, Mike's phone buzzed. A blocked number. He answered. Officer Thompson, came a low voice. Parking garage, level 3, 20 minutes, come alone. Click. He looked at Sarah, who shook her head. Wasn't me. Mike didn't hesitate. 15 minutes later, he stood beneath the fluorescent lights of the garage. A woman emerged from the shadows. Sarah, you sent the message? He asked. Sort of, she said, flashing a badge. Special Agent Sarah Collins, Fish and Wildlife Service, undercover. Mike's breath. Good. I've been embedded for 11 months, she continued. Tracking Reynolds' trafficking network. She's the linchpin. We've intercepted shipments, found payment trails, but nothing stuck. What do you want from me? I need your help, she said simply. We need to set the trap. Use the cubs, let her come for them. Mike stared at her. You want to use them as bait? I want to stop this, permanently. Mike's jaw clenched. Only if we protect them. Every second. Sarah nodded. Agreed, we do it right, or not at all. They returned to the medical unit, where Dr. Parker sat beside the incubator. Mike knelt next to her. How's he doing? He's fighting, she said, her hand resting gently on the cub's side. I've named them, you know. Mike looked at her. The girl with the mask, Liberty. The bigger boy, Hope. And this little guy? Justice. The name hit Mike like a freight train. It echoed in his chest, his daughter's unsolved case, this moment. Everything he'd fought for. Justice. He whispered the name, feeling its weight. Then we do whatever it takes, he said, his voice steel. To protect them. And to bring her down. The air inside the airport's wildlife medical unit was heavy, almost still. as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Liberty and Hope, the two healthier tiger cubs, had begun responding to treatment. They blinked, moved weakly, and drank small sips of formula from syringes. But the smallest one, Justice, remained locked in a battle between life and death. Mike stayed close, rarely leaving the room, watching every rise and fall of the cub's fragile chest. Dr. Parker barely slept, setting up a cot in the corner of the clinic, checking vitals every hour. Sarah came and went with new information and quiet resolve, her cover now revealed, her mission fully in motion. The sting operation had been set. Through controlled leaks, they'd let it be known that the cubs would be transferred to a sanctuary in Central Florida, and that one of Reynolds' operatives, Vasquez, had begun to cooperate with authorities. It was bait, pure and simple, and they all hoped Reynolds would bite. She did. At exactly 7:23 p.m., a black SUV entered the airport's service lot and parked outside the veterinary wing. Mike, watching from the surveillance van, saw a man in a maintenance uniform step out, glance around, and casually walk toward the back entrance. "Reynolds' man is at the door," Mike radioed. "Stand by." Inside, Dr. Parker stood at the table, adjusting Liberty's warming pad. Sarah was hidden in the nearby supply closet, weapon drawn and nerves coiled tight. The man reached the outer door and produced a small device. Within seconds, the electronic lock blinked green. He was inside. Dr. Parker turned as he entered. "Can I help you?" "Maintenance," he said with smooth confidence. "Temperature issues. We didn't report any—" "Step aside," he snapped, drawing. "Pistol." Dr. Parker froze, placing herself between him and the cubs. Then Sarah exploded from the closet. "Federal agent, drop your weapon." He spun toward her, surprised but not quick enough. She tackled him, forcing him to the floor. They struggled, fists slamming into ribs, elbows cracking. Sarah's weapon skittered across the floor. He reached for his belt, but Mike was already sprinting down the hallway. He burst through the door just as the fight tipped. Sarah was pinned. Mike launched forward, tackling the man off her. The two men crashed into a table, sending medical supplies. Flying. Mike grunted, absorbing a blow to the ribs. The man was trained, skilled, and strong. They fought hand to hand, grunting, rolling, smashing into cabinets. Suddenly, the door flew open again. Another man in black tactical gear entered, followed by Vasquez, in his arms a transport container. Dr. Parker screamed. "No." Mike saw Vasquez move toward the table, hands outstretched. "Don't touch them," he shouted, still grappling. Parker lunged, trying to stop Vasquez, who shoved her aside roughly. She hit the counter and slid to the floor. "Step aside." "Doctor," Vasquez said coldly. "These aren't animals to you," she growled. "They're products." The second man grabbed Liberty and shoved her into the transport crate. Mike's heart exploded with rage. He elbowed his attacker in the throat, broke free, and tackled Vasquez to the floor. The container flew from his grip and skidded under the table. Sarah, still dazed, tried to stand. She aimed her sidearm but couldn't keep her arm steady, her muscles still spasming from the earlier taser hit. Then came the worst moment. Justice crashed. The smallest cub's vitals nosedived. Parker scrambled back to the table, already beginning chest compressions. "Bag him," she ordered. Mike grabbed the tiny ambu bag and started pumping air. Parker counted beats, her voice urgent. 1, 2, 3, 4. "Come on, little guy," she whispered. "Not like this." Outside, Agent Miller and federal officers stormed in, finally breaking through. The two masked men were subdued, zip-tied. Vasquez was unconscious. Sarah slid down the wall, her breath ragged. Miller approached Mike. "Are you okay?" Mike didn't answer. His world had narrowed to the cub beneath Parker's hands. Justice didn't move. His chest refused to rise. "Keep going," Mike begged. "Don't stop." Parker's voice broke as she whispered, "He's gone." Silence filled the room. Mike's knees hit the tile. He stared at the tiny form, so still, so final. Justice, the name they'd given him, had fought so hard, endured so much. And now, He was gone. Time of death: 1:47 a.m. Parker placed a small blue cloth over the cub's body. He wasn't weak, she whispered. He was a fighter. Even hardened federal agents stood still, heads bowed. The silence was broken by a soft mew. Liberty and Hope were still alive, huddled beneath the exam table, frightened but safe. Sarah stood beside Mike. "We got them," she said. In the act, with weapons, with stolen animals, Miller's team began collecting evidence. One agent held up ID from the intruders, former military contractors. One had high-level airport access. Mike looked up, jaw clenched. "She's behind." "This. We need proof," Miller said. "Solid evidence. She's too powerful." Then she arrived. Jessica Reynolds stood in the doorway, perfectly composed. "What happened?" she asked smoothly. "I heard there was an incident. I came to help." Miller stepped forward. "This is a federal crime scene, Dr. Reynolds. Please remain outside." She looked past him, spotting Justice's body beneath the cloth. "Oh," she said flatly. "That one died?" Mike surged forward, fists clenched. Sarah blocked him gently. "His name was Justice," Mike said. "And yes, he died. Because of you." Reynolds smiled thinly. "How tragic. The weakest rarely survive." "You're done," Miller said. But Reynolds stayed calm. "I run a legal facility. I've saved hundreds of animals." "Not anymore," Sarah snapped. "We caught your people. We traced the case to your foundation." Reynolds turned to leave. As she walked away, she tossed over her shoulder. "You won't make it stick." Parker watched her go, then turned. To Mike, "She's wrong," she said. "Justice wasn't weak. He fought harder than anyone." Mike nodded, still staring at the covered body. They had saved two, but lost one, and for Mike, the war wasn't over yet. Morning came with little mercy. The air around the veterinary unit was still thick with grief. Justice, the smallest of the tiger cubs, had lost his battle in the night. His tiny body now rested beneath a soft blue cloth on the examination table. While Liberty and Hope remained under close observation, Mike hadn't left. He couldn't. Every time he looked at the remaining cubs, he thought of Justice, what they had lost, and more importantly, what still needed to be done. But this time, they had leverage. Peterson returned with news. "We've got Reynolds under surveillance," he told Mike. "She's nervous, first time I've seen her sweat." "She should be," Mike replied. "Her people were caught red-handed." Peterson looked at him, eyes narrowing. "What's your stake in this, Thompson?" "This isn't just about animals, is it?" Mike hesitated. Then, quietly, "My daughter disappeared 5 years ago. The system buried it. Same way it tried to bury this case. I see the same patterns, the same evil." Peterson nodded slowly. "All right. Then let's make this count." Back inside, Miller and Sarah were going through evidence. They'd already discovered that the suitcase used to smuggle the cubs was lined with fabric manufactured exclusively for Reynolds' foundation. They now had her contractors in custody, along with access logs, prints, and transport records linking everything to her. But Miller wasn't satisfied. "We need her giving the order," he said. Something undeniable. That's when Mike proposed it. "Leak the right intel," he said. "Let her think one of her guys is talking, make her panic." Sarah caught on immediately. Force her to make a move. Within hours, the sting was set. A rumor was floated. Vasquez had flipped. The cubs were to be relocated that night to a secure wildlife sanctuary under federal escort. It was all a lie, but Reynolds didn't know that. They watched the trap unfold in real time. A black SUV arrived at the loading dock. A man in maintenance, overalls, entered the building using a valid access card. Cameras tracked his movement toward the medical unit. Sarah waited inside, weapon ready. Dr. Parker remained at her post by the cubs, a brave front masking her worry. The man entered with confidence, flashing a fake ID and claiming to be doing a systems check. "We didn't request service," Dr. Parker said. He pulled a gun. "Step away." In a flash, Sarah was on him, tackling him to the floor, disarming him. "Target secured," she reported over the radio. Then they spotted Reynolds on surveillance, entering from a side door. No disguise this time. Just power, arrogance, and the false certainty that she was untouchable. Mike followed her through the corridor, watching as she barked orders into her phone. When she turned the corner and saw him, she recovered instantly. "Officer Thompson," she said. "Is everything all right?" Mike raised his weapon, calm but ready. "Drop the act." Her smile didn't falter. "You have no proof." "Maybe not enough for a courtroom," Mike said. "But I've got you now, and I'm not letting you walk away." "You don't understand what I do," Reynolds said coldly. "People pay millions for these animals, for their bones, their organs. I fund sanctuaries with that money. I save more than I lose." "They're not yours to trade," Mike growled. "They're not yours to kill." "Then arrest me," she challenged, arms wide. Sarah appeared behind her. Gladly, Reynolds was arrested on the spot, charged with trafficking endangered species, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and assault. But even in handcuffs, she looked composed, calculating. Later, in the small conference room where Mike, Sarah, Miller, and Peterson debriefed, the mood was tense. The agents Reynolds had hired were staying silent. Her lawyers were circling. Miller looked up from a file. "We need a break, something that ties her directly." Sarah's phone buzzed. She looked down and smiled. "We've got it. Bangkok field office just confirmed. The supplier who sold the cubs has flipped. He's linking the shipments directly to Reynolds' foundation, and we've got receipts." "And her phone?" Mike asked. "Burner phones, encrypted apps. But one mistake," Sarah said. "A single call from her personal line to a shell company that paid the smugglers." Peterson leaned back. "That might be enough." Sarah looked at Mike. "We're close." Days later, Justice was laid to rest in a quiet garden on the sanctuary grounds. A small plaque read, "Justice, Tiger Cub, gone but not forgotten." Beside it, Mike placed a hand-carved wooden tiger he had made himself. Parker stood beside him. "It's perfect," she said softly. The two surviving cubs, Liberty and Hope, were growing stronger by the day. Dr. Parker oversaw their care personally, eventually transferring full-time to the sanctuary. She even offered Mike a job, not just work, she said. Purpose. Mike accepted. Weeks passed, Reynolds' trial loomed. Her political allies vanished. Public opinion turned. Mike was asked to testify. He agreed. And then, one morning, Sarah handed him a folder. "It's a long shot," she said, "but there's a lead from Thailand, a trafficking route that matches the time and location of your daughter's disappearance." Mike opened the file. Inside was a grainy photo of a young woman, her features blurred but familiar. "Emily." His hands trembled. "No promises," Sarah said, "but we're following it." Mike stood at Justice's grave that night, watching the stars overhead. He thought of all the lives shattered by greed, of what they had saved, and of what still waited in the dark. Liberty and Hope chased each other in the moonlight. Justice was gone, but his name lived on, not just carved in stone, but etched into their mission: to fight, to protect, to never look away again. Six weeks after Jessica Reynolds was taken into custody, Liberty and Hope stepped into their new world. The sanctuary held a ribbon-cutting ceremony to mark the opening of the Tiger Conservation Center, where the two surviving cubs would serve as ambassadors, not just for their species, but for every voiceless life exploited in the shadows. The crowd applauded as Liberty bounded into her enclosure, now healthy and bold, her distinctive mask-like markings catching the sunlight. Hope followed, more cautious but no less curious. Dr. Parker gave the keynote speech. "We're here not just to celebrate these two," she said, gesturing toward the cubs, "but to remember the one who didn't make it. His name was Justice, and he reminded us why this fight matters." In the back of the crowd, Mike stood quietly, arms folded. He didn't like the spotlight, but he knew this wasn't about him. Never had been. Sarah joined him, handing over a file. "New intel," she said. "From Myanmar. One of Reynolds' partners flipped. And there's something that might connect to your daughter." Mike's heart skipped a beat. She might be alive? He asked, barely daring to say the words. Sarah's expression was gentle. Too early to know, but it's a real lead. We're following it. Mike turned his eyes back toward the cubs. Liberty pounced on a patch of grass. Hope rolled playfully. Beneath her, they made it, he said softly. Because you refused to let them be forgotten, Sarah replied. Later that evening, Mike visited the garden where Justice was buried. The wooden tiger he had carved still sat beneath the plaque, now surrounded by wildflowers. I wish we could have saved you too, he whispered. But you didn't die for nothing. He sat on the bench, letting the quiet settle over him. Justice's name had become more than a memory. It was a promise, a vow, not just to fight for animals trapped in cages, but for children lost in systems, for lives dismissed as collateral damage, for the ones people tried to forget. Behind him, the sanctuary was alive with soft growls and rustling. Leaves. Liberty and hope were still playing, still growing, still surviving. Mike stood up, brushing off his jacket. The sky above was streaked with stars. A new chapter waited, not just for the cubs, but for him. He wasn't just an officer anymore. He was a guardian, and maybe, just maybe, a father still fighting to bring his daughter home. As he walked back, toward the lights of the sanctuary, a quiet peace settled over him. The war wasn't over, but tonight, justice had a name, and hope had a heartbeat.